green. Are you an ultimate Eagles football fan? Well, you're in the right place.
Ready?
This is Birds 365, hosted by the new Mac and Mac, Jody McDonald and John McMullen.
Here we go.
Who collectively have covered and talked about more than 50 plus years of Eagles football. Kick off your day with Birds 365. You'll get debate.
We love to argue.
You'll get the real story from inside the locker room. And you'll hear from some of the great football minds from around the region. You're about to become an Eagles insider. Get in the game. Join Jody Mack and Johnny Mack and join the football community that flocks to Birds 365. Birds 365 starts right now.
Welcome to the NFL. Let's go.
It's an OTA Thursday on Birds 365 with your Mac and Mac guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here would hang with you and talk birds for the next 2 hours. We've got two good guests coming your way. One for sure, joining us in less than 20 minutes now, and another one in hour number 2 to give us a little bit more of a national perspective on where the birds sit. J Mac, how you feeling this morning?
A little unsettled, Jody. A little unsettled.
Why would that be?
Well, a little bit late, rushing around, trying to get everything done, trying to get the dog out. Same old.
Okay.
Nothing big, but unsettled is how I describe it.
Actually up and ready to rock today because no on the air till 2:00 on WIP last. I was in bed before midnight.
There we go.
So I'm
That's
ready to
nice.
rock today.
Yeah.
But I will let you choose, Mr. Unsettled. We can begin in one of two spots, either on the field or off the field. On the field being the battle for the left guard position, or off the field, the complete non-battle of who's going to be running this football team in 20 years from now, since our buddy Bo Wolf over at The Athletic did say that Jeffrey Lurie, Julian Lurie, son of Jeff Lurie, now has an official title with the organization. He was Prince in waiting prior to this with an unofficial title, but they have deemed him eligible and it's necessary for him to have a title. Which would you rather talk about, off the field or on the field stuff?
Well, I guess off the field is the bigger news because that's new news, and that, as you mentioned, Julian Lurie given a specific title. And, Jeffrey Lurie talked about that back at the league meetings, if you remember, and he said, there's no hurry. But he did, also admit if he wants to, he's the guy going to be running the team, running the organization. So I do think all the Eagles' attrition that they suffered in the scouting department and football operations gave them the opportunity to say, all right, well, we got to rearrange this thing, so we might as well start it. And there you have the title. And it's, somewhat, I think, not specialized for reason, business and football operations strategy. Our buddy Bo Wolf, who obviously used to work for the Eagles back in the day. So he knows a lot of people in that building. That's going to be the title to start. But yeah, as you pointed out, Jody, this is the guy who's going to be running the organization. Jeffrey Lurie's 70 years old whenever Jeffrey decides to step away. And for those who dislike Howie Roseman, and there are a lot of them, and look, I think they're nuts. I think the Eagles have one of the best general managers in football. I probably get more crap for saying that than anything else. People think I'm trying to get on Howie's good side. No, I rip him to high heaven whenever I think it's warranted. The problem is, I think he's better than most other GMs. So when you put him up and you comp and you say, well, he does this well compared to other GMs who don't do things necessarily as well, it kind of comes into focus. But this is sort of that sliver for those people who want to get Howie out of here for whatever reason. Anytime there's a shift at the top of an organization and somebody's in, well, they tend to like to bring in their own people. And we don't know a lot about Julian, but what we do know is that he's very close to Alec Hallaby. And I think, when the Eagles, and it should be coming any day now, rearrange their front office specifically, I think he's going to be one of those guys that gets a title bump as well. So this is, it might be under the radar, but to me, it's interesting. I will say that. But to others, it might not be as interesting because, as you know, I like that phrase, inside baseball. It's a little inside baseball, Jody, but we could see the rumblings of a power struggle at the NovaCare complex.
Could be. Yeah, I think you've got a good read on it. Here's the only reason why I if I were Eagle fans, I would not be waiting with bated breath. If you're from the Fire Howie camp, which there are some, I think Howie has actually moved a couple of people out of that Fire Howie camp structure with the offseason that he's had. Some people stay mobile, going back and forth between love Howie and hate Howie. Here's just an observation that's based on nothing other than my own interpretation, seeing Jeff Lurie the handful of times we see him every single year. Yeah, I don't think he's going anywhere fast.
No, I agree with that. It's not immediate. I shouldn't say immediate, but just long term. Just keep it. Just put an asterisk next to it. It's simmering on the back burner. It's not on the front burner, ready to pile over the edges. But just keep it in mind. But yeah, Jeffrey's not going anywhere right now. So
when you and I are in our 12th year of Birds 365, and we get to do the show that Jeff Lurie is stepping away from the day-to-day operations of the Eagles, I think we're looking at like 10 years down the road. I don't think anything is imminent. So if Howie Roseman is going to be in the position, and oh, by the way, I don't know if Jeffrey will ever move away from Howie, could ever move away from Howie. If Howie's going to be in his position, as long as Jeffrey's at the top of the organizational chart, he's got another decade under his belt. So Alex Hallaby could get a promotion at some point, but I don't know that he's going to be supplanting or usurping Howie anytime soon. But I do find it very interesting that Julian has now been made official heir apparent of this organization. And the one thing that makes me laugh, I got to see if you have the same reaction. And Jeff has been more forthcoming about his son over the past 12 months. Prior to, he was working in New York in a group that I don't quite understand. Maybe you could fill in the blanks for some of our listeners.
It's the princes of the league.
Yeah,
is basically he's in the princes of the league club.
Right. Which they have in New York that is the young individuals, sons, daughters, whatever, of the owners of the teams that come to the city to learn how the National Football League works behind the scenes. And then they go back to their individual teams. And that's exactly what's happened here with Julian taking an official title with the Philadelphia Eagles. But Jeffrey has been very careful in continuing to say, well, if he wants to do it, if Julian has a desire to do it sometime, what's he going to do? Borrow a couple bucks from his dad and open some Wawa franchises? I don't think so. I think he's going to be in position to take over and be the driving force of a National Football League team.
I do think, that's more of a nod towards, I think a lot of people, not everyone, but they don't want to push their children in a certain direction just because they've had success. And sometimes, they find other interests and they have the ability to do other things.
Right. But he didn't graduate from Brown last week. He's been in the NFL developmental factory for years now.
Yeah. Well, and he said, essentially Jeffrey has said this is the way it's going to go, but I think he just wants to leave it open-ended in case, You know how young people
What,
are.
he's going to
They
want to
change-
go out on tour with the Grateful Dead or something?
That-
Come
that-
on,
well,
you know
let's-
he's taking over the Eagles.
Well,
Jeffrey.
let's look at my buddy Tony Khan. Let's look at Tony. Shad's in the same situation, right? You know, Shad wants him to take over the Jaguars, and he wants him to take over Fulham, the Premier League team. They own that as well. He loves pro wrestling. He loves it. And, you know, his dad loves his son. And he's like, all right, go do it. And right now, he's going to run that company until it's run into the ground, and the wrestling company where, you know, somebody else is going to run the Jags. You know, will that change in years coming? Maybe. But that's sort of the same thing. They can go in a different direction. In the case of Julian, he's not going in a different direction. He's not. He's gonna run the Eagles, and that's the smart move. You know, that's an easier way to make money. Let's put it that way. But I love, you were talking about it. I was giggling to myself because, you know, that junior rotational program in the NFL is for highly selective. This is a quote: highly selective, high potential individuals. Yeah. Potential of, I won the genetic lottery. That's your potential. Now, Julian might be the greatest owner in the history of sports, but let's not, you know, he's got high potential because who his dad is.
Could be the greatest or could be the worst.
Yeah.
Chances are he'll be somewhere in the middle. The question is he close to the greatest or is he close to the worst?
Yeah. And he's 27 years old, I believe. I believe he's 27 years old. That's not, you know, you can talk about.
How old was your buddy Tony Khan when his father bought the Jags?
No idea.
Okay.
I'd have to look it up. Tony's young too. He's not that young. But yeah, 27. I mean, it better be 10 years for Jeffrey, because you need some experience in that. And people can talk about ageism and people being too old to do this and too old to do that. But when you're talking about immense jobs, like essentially you're the CEO of the corporation, and Tony's 39 right now. So, but
how long has Shad been owning the Jags?
let's see.
Is it a full decade?
It's got to be closing in on a full decade. July, 2012. So exactly. Okay. Nice call. So, you know, 29, when his dad bought the team. I don't know what
he already had taken some stances in life. He's graduated from college. He's looking for a gig. His father's got a lot of money and his own, and he's come. Oh, guess what? He bought the Jacksonville Jaguars. And Tony's 29 at the time. Jeff Lurie's son has been the heir apparent his whole life. Has Lurie owned the Eagles 27 years?
Yeah, he crossed. It's 27. Yeah,
right.
It's a long time.
So basically, his son has been in line to take over the franchise since birth. That wasn't the same as Tony Khan since he was 29 years old when his father bought the team. So I see where you're trying to make the comparison, but the comparison is not exactly the same.
Well, you're never going to get a perfect comparison. Yeah, but I don't know if Julian was aware that his father was the leader of the Eagles when he was born, or even probably till he was, you know, however.
I'm guessing by the time he's 5 or 6, hey, my father owns the Eagles.
Yeah, but you don't know.
When he went off the first grade and they asked all the kids what your father does for a living, I'm guessing he said with pride, my father owns the Philadelphia Eagles.
But I don't think you know what that means at that point, other than, I don't know. Ron
when I was 7, I knew for a fact that when my father was the head of the minor league operation of the Mets, and kids made fun of me because the Mets stunk, I had to learn pretty fast.
But you're getting mocked because of people insulting your father. That's probably a bad thing. That might turn you away.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Slings and arrows, you might as well at least get the fringe benefits.
Look, he's making the right decision. Tony's making the wrong decision. I mean, the NFL is, you know, that's about as concrete as it comes. So, he's going to take over the team. I think the bigger story is, what does that mean long term when he takes over the team? And nobody has any way of knowing. But I do know at 27 what I was trying. He's not ready to take over the team. So he needs this period that he's going to have. And hopefully he learns from it. And hopefully the Eagles have been very good at this. And even though the NFL, for some reason, values personnel as a greater job than sort of somebody running the entire football operations department like Catherine Raish, it's a bigger job, the latter one. And Julian's got to learn about both sides of the building. And obviously there's a lot of pitfalls along the way, which you have seen with that quarter century plus of Jeffrey Lurie. There's a lot of issues you got to deal with over that many years. A lot of issues, and they come from all different directions.
Here's the one thing I think will be interesting. And again, we're looking at a timeline, and who knows how long the timeline is going to go. Jeff Lurie doesn't know, and he's the one who's going to basically decide the timeline. At some point, if we work with the parameters, I just threw out off the top of my head, 10 years from now, when Jeff Lurie hits 80, could he be ready to step back from a major role? As long as he's still taking an air, it's going to be his team. Don't kid yourself. But he may take a step back and turn the reins over to his son. In that interim 10-year period, does Julian get to a position where he has influence over his father, where he can tell his father, listen, Dad, know you love Howie, but blah, 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 blah. That could very well happen. I think we're looking at least 10 years before Julian gets the reins. But anywhere in between in that interim period, he may be able to affect his
and that's the
decision.
part that is the most interesting. That's what I was talking about at the start, because look, he's going to have – nobody's had more input with Jeffrey Lurie on the Philadelphia Eagles than Howie Roseman since he came back, since 2.0, and arguably, at the start of 1.0. But nobody has had more influence. That changes. He's in the building now every day. That changes. Family's family. Watch The Sopranos again. Family's family. And that changes the dynamic a little bit, especially, Jody, if Julian wants to push it. And I have no way of knowing that.
Right.
Nobody does. But if he wants to, that would make things interesting. I would be excited about that as a reporter. I would be. I wouldn't necessarily be excited about that if I was a fan, but as a reporter, that would be interesting.
Well, as a fan, it's an unknown. It may work out great. It could be a disaster. Again, it'll probably be somewhere in the middle, but we won't know that until we actually get to know Julian Lurie. And although they've done a pretty good job of keeping him under wraps to this point, they did say that he got an official title as of yesterday. So, yes, he is the heir apparent to the Philadelphia Eagles. All right, Jody McDonald, John McMullen, we're your Mac and Mac guys. Coming up next, one of our good buddies, and I guess we got to call him an addition to the team now, from the 33rd team and JAKIBSports.com. Our pal, Paul Domowitch, is going to hop aboard with us. He joins us next here on Birds 365.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on three. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
Do you stream on a Roku, Fire Stick, Android TV, or Apple TV? Now you can watch 6ABC 24/7 with the 6ABC Philadelphia streaming app.
The big story on Action.
Search 6ABC Philadelphia and start streaming today.
In Philadelphia, we celebrated the miracle with pride only 5 years ago. And then the following morning, IBEW Local 98 members went back to work, building this city, rescuing our communities from decay, and inspiring the young men and women of the region to take pride in who we are. Like the Cats, Local 98 members believe in hope.
To learn more about who we are, what we do, and career opportunities with Local 98, visit us, IBEW98.org.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
What's that?
A rocks glass?
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
Holy shit.
The glass is for cocktails, right?
It's for this, 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 and that.
Is the length of the glass equal to your...
You betcha.
But is it made out of...
Glass?
Yeah, okay, but is the rip...
Smooth?
Will you stop doing...
That?
I'm the professional here.
And you're telling me I can get one of these glasses for free?
That's right. 1 free rocks glass per customer with each first-time purchase of Stateside Vodka. All from the company that's highly awarded. 0 carbs, 0 sugar, and deliciously tasting vodka. So good, it just disappears.
Wish I had some stateside vodka in my coffee cup this morning. Mac and Mac guys, sober as judges.
Jolt, Jody. Stateside jolt.
No, I stick to caffeine. May hit the stateside later. We hit our guest line. Joining us right now from the 33rd team and JAKIBSports.com, our new website here with JAKIB Media, is Paul Domowitch. Damo, good to catch up with you, my friend. Always good to get your opinions on everything. Are you going to get a bigger byline than McMullen? That's all I need to know. Who's going to have the big name print on the web?
On Damo's stat package is legendary for the preview of games. So I'm going to say that's Damo by a country mile.
You're being modest, John.
All right.
I'm happy to be here with my 2 favorite Macs behind the Big Mac.
Yeah, we appreciate that as well, Damo. So I think it's a good time to have you on this morning because our buddy Bo Wolf broke the news that Julian Lurie is coming into the organization in a official capacity. We all know it was going to happen, but you've been around Jeffrey Lurie since day one. 70 years old, can't last forever. This is obviously the heir apparent who's going to be running this team at some point. Now that he's in the day-to-day operations of the building, though, even though it's not immediate, do you think that changes the power structure at all? Because family's family. So, how he's been closest to Jeffrey, I think that changes.
Well, I mean, it's someone that is going to have Jeffrey's ear, obviously, but I think Jeffrey also knows that his son has a lot to learn. I mean, look at the Cowboys with Jerry Jones. I mean, his sons have been with him forever with high titles, and yet there's only one leader there, and that's Jerry. I think Jeffrey envisions the day when his son will take over for him, but I don't see Jeffrey stepping down anytime soon, and I don't see him. I mean, the only thing to watch out for is whether his son might not be as excited about Howie down the road as he is, where that might affect things. But right now, that's not the case. So I don't see it changing anything right now.
Here's the only question I would have, because I agree with everything you just said, Damo. If Bo has the exact reporting correct, and an official title means actual influence from the day he gets that title, That's one thing, but it's going to take a while, as you and I both think, for Jeffrey to see the true power base of the Eagles. How about just the people working in the organization? You've got the boss, and now you got the boss's son. So that's just one other individual who's looking over your shoulder, making sure you're doing your title right. Does it have any influence on the organization in general? They're putting the new power structure together. A lot of front office personnel left. They've hired some new ones, at least being reported. Some will get promotions and the like. Does it bring an extra added layer of pressure to the organization, no matter what position you're in, to perform? Because now you've got a boss, and you got a boss emeritus. At some point, you're going to report to him too, if you're planning on keeping your job for the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah. To a certain degree, I guess, I don't know a lot about the son. I think if I'm not wrong, correct me, John, but he's another one of these analytics types.
Yes. That's my concern, Damo, because Alec Halby's going to get a promotion. That's what I'm keeping my eye on.
Yeah, because that's been, that's a sore spot with, that's one of the reasons Doug Peterson's not here anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, he did not much care for the whole analytics thing. He resented the analytics people that were feeding him information for no good reason other than the numbers said something. So yeah, that's something to watch out for. But I don't, I got to believe, while it probably is going to help the standing of some of the analytics people in the organization, I don't think he's going to overstep his bounds, at least in the near future.
Go ahead, John.
No, go ahead, Jody.
I wanted to take it back onto the field, if that's okay with you, Damo.
Sure.
It's been a couple of weeks since we had you on, I think, since Peter King came out with his power rankings of the Eagles at 9th in the overall National Football League and 4th in the NFC. I know power rankings really mean nothing other than an educated opinion, and there's no more educated opinion than Peter King, but it is just that. It's a kind of like a beauty contest, but pressure comes with it. I guess I'm a pressure guy today, worried about pressure. Do the Eagles deserve, have they earned, they merited a status as high as not only top 10, top 9 in the National Football League as of their roster with all the changes they made this offseason now?
Yeah. Well, I mean, they made the playoffs last year, so that puts them in the top 14 before the offseason even got started. You look at the moves they've made. I mean, clearly everyone, including Peter, has acknowledged that they had one of the better off seasons. So, I would say 9 or 10 is pretty fair. There's a beyond Tampa, the Rams, and Green Bay, I think there's, I think it's clearly those are the 3 best teams in the NFC. After that, I think you could put them right there with San Francisco, with the Cowboys. So I think 9's fair.
The San Francisco team is interesting to me, and I brought this up because they're so similar, at least from how they're being built. If you look at Peter's top 8 teams, and I don't have it in front of me, but I do remember the top 8 teams all had star quarterbacks, legit star quarterbacks. And then the drop-off was the Eagles at 9, and the 49ers were at 10. And they don't have, but Jimmy Garoppolo is the one who has proven, he's gotten to the Final Four twice. He's gotten to the Super Bowl once. I look at that 49ers team, the way they built their team, very similar to what the Eagles are trying to do. You have Trent Williams at left tackle, as a Hall of Fame guy. That's a first ballot Hall of Fame guy. George Kittle at tight end. I love Dallas Goedert. He's not George Kittle. A.J. Brown, Deebo Samuel, you can kind of – they're similar, different players, but similar as far as talent, production, things like that. The 49ers have the great running game. Nick Bosa, hey, I love Hassan Reddick, but he ain't Nick Bosa. So, the Eagles are sort of they want to become what the 49ers have been. Then we talk about the coach. I should mention the coach. Kyle's got a little bit more on the resume than Nick Sirianni. Are people skipping steps with this Eagles team a little bit because they're enamored, they're a little tipsy on the offseason moves?
Well, I think much like San Francisco, John, it's all going to come down to the quarterback. I mean, if Trey Lance is what the 49ers hope, they're going to have a damn good team. And, we're going to see what Jalen Hurts' ceiling is. If it's as high, as they're hoping it is, this is a team that can quickly become a Super Bowl contender. If he doesn't make much progress over last year, this is just another team that's going to fight for a playoff spot, and they're going to be looking for a quarterback next year. So, I mean, that to me is the key. I mean, they're going to be better defensively, much better, I think. Their offensive line is one of the best in the league. Adding A.J. Brown has given them one more playmaker for Jalen to throw to. But it all comes down to Jalen. If he can't get the job done, it's just a pretty good team. I mean, if Jalen can be what they hope he can be, if he makes improvement in this, in the same system again for the first time in I don't know how many years since he's been in the same system 2 years in a row, then this could be a special team, I think.
I think it's high school since he's had the same system. Yeah.
And he's put in I don't know if he can, I liked him when they drafted him. I believed I believe he can be a franchise quarterback in this league, but I don't know, and I don't think Howie still knows, which is why we're at the point we're at. But I'll give the kid credit; he's worked his tail off.
Oh yeah.
Off season, he goes and go out to California. He's been out there until he came back to work with the team, where he's been working with a quarterbacks coach. There's nothing he's not doing to try to get better. The question is, what's that level going to be?
Domo, both you and John may get an email at some point today, an invitation to come down and actually get some grass time tomorrow and watch the Eagles in their major workouts. Now, you've been covering this team long enough that you understand the term two-a-days, which meant something back in the 80s. Two-a-days now means hours per necessary, and they don't even fill out those 2 hours. They get out of there before 2 hours, not two workouts, morning and afternoon. So things have changed drastically in the National Football League over the time that you've been following them. But the Eagles even more so, maybe than any other team in the National Football League, believe less is more. That because they weren't nearly as injured last year as they had been in the 2 previous years, they're putting their eggs in the basket of, if we can't practice, we can't get hurt. And they think that that's going to work going forward for them. It is a very tricky road to walk down and a balance to try and strike. Eagles doing this right? Is it better to preserve yourself and err on the side of caution to stay healthy rather than put in extra hours and hours and hours to get ready for an upcoming season?
More and more teams are taking that approach. They just want to get to the starting line in one piece. The physicality that I'm good with that. I mean, you don't need to hit in the spring, but I don't know how much like classroom work they're doing. If they're comfortable with the level of everybody picking up the system, especially the young guys, if they feel they're getting enough reps in these 6 OTAs and don't need the mandatory camp. I thought they cut it a little bit too much. I don't think this was totally necessary. I would have gone with the 10 OTAs. Just, you don't have to hit, you don't have to have 11 on 11s, but get them out in the field doing reps. Now, again, I don't know what they're doing in between. They obviously feel comfortable that they're doing enough that when they get to the starting line, everybody's going to know what they're supposed to do. I like this, what they're doing, and I don't like it because I like it from the standpoint that they probably will be healthy when they get to week 1. The question is, are they going to be ready mentally week 1 with especially a lot of these young guys? I have no doubt Jalen is going to be ready. He's, like we talked about, second year in this same system for the first time. There are going to be no problems there, but you're trying to integrate A.J. Brown, other guys. Those are questions where I think a couple of extra OTAs might have helped, but I don't think it's a big negative. I don't think it's a big positive.
Yeah, I'm kind of torn on that one as well, Damo, because I'm like, on one hand, and I always say it, and you'll probably agree, and anyone who's been around the NFL for a long time knows, we've all yet to meet the coach that doesn't want to practice. I mean, they want to prepare. But you do have these restrictions from the CBA, and they keep getting scaled back and scaled back and scaled back. So I've kind of hit that point where I'm like, well, you can't prepare like you want to prepare anyway. So you might as well get to week one as healthy as possible. So I kind of lean on the Eagles side of it. And then the scale back of team drills, as you mentioned, there's no team drills for the Eagles in OTAs. They're going strictly 7-on-7s. Okay. And I say to myself, well, I mean, I guess you can argue run fits and making sure people are hitting their landmarks. But other than that, offensive and defensive linemen, when you don't have pads on, they're like cosplaying for effect. They're like stand-ins in a Hollywood movie. I mean, why make them stand out there? So I kind of understand the Eagles' perspective. So I want to ask you from a league-wide standpoint, do they just not care about preparation because they know people aren't going to turn off the TV no matter what the product looks like?
This is union driven, as you guys know. I mean, and the league was willing to give them this, a lot. I think, and also COVID kind of played into this. They didn't get a chance to practice at all during COVID, and the league and the league still was as popular as ever. The games were as popular as ever. The ratings. So, I mean, the union grabbed onto that and said, we don't need to be out there. And the league, doesn't care. I mean, the owners only care about the bottom line and the ratings and all that stuff. And so they were willing to make concessions to the union with respect to off-season work in exchange for other things, for the 17-game season, for eventually the 18-game season, extra playoff games. All this stuff that the union once said, never, we will never do this. It's, our players, it's suicide. Well, then suddenly, they realized it back then, but players are making more money now because the cap number's gone way up with all of this. And so they're willing, in exchange, they said, well, at least, we don't want to work during the off season, and we don't want to have to report till May or April or whatever it is. We, limit the OTAs, and that's what they've done. And there are coaches that have howled. I mean, before John Gruden's was drummed out of the league, he constantly was talking about how big a negative this was, limiting off-season work, especially when you have a young quarterback. But basically, it wasn't important enough for them to hold firm on it.
Damo, even though the Eagles will have limited quote unquote team, which means for me 11-11 action here in preseason, they do have at least one, if not a couple different places where they need to determine who's actually going to be their starter, who's going to be the guy who's going to man the most snaps at that position. One that kind of sticks out is right guard. I asked Zach Berman yesterday a percentage question in this area. I want to ask you the same, not question, but a percentage question as well. Isaac Seumalo, one of three things is going to happen. Either he's going to be the Eagles' starting right guard, either he's going to be a backup to a guy like Jack Driscoll or a situational substitution guy, which we know on the offensive line means basically not playing because they don't shuttle guys in and out like they do on the defensive line, or he could be traded. That the Eagles could take the depth that they have at offensive line and say, hey, we could move Isaac and get something that could fortify a different position for us. Those three possibilities, 100% break down the way you see it. Isaac starting, Isaac backing up, Isaac out of town.
And they have to add up to 100%?
Correct.
That's the tough part, Tom.
Let's see. Isaac starting, I'm going to put it 60%, 65%.
All right.
Isaac being traded, 25%, and that leaves 10% backup. I just, they're going to probably Dillard or Isaac, one of them is going to be gone. You can't keep all these veteran starters. Veteran or guys that can start. Dillard seems the guy you would continue to hang on to until you hope somebody gets hurt for another team in late August and is desperate for a left tackle. Isaac, I like Jack Driscoll. I think if Isaac's healthy, he's I want him as my starting guard. So that's the way I look at it.
Yeah, and to me, it kind of looks like, do you really think you're a contender? If you're a top 10 team, I'm going with Isaac Seumalo. I kind of know, though, the plan is Jack to be the starter in 2023. So, on the other hand, you might say, well, let's get this thing started anyway. Let's continue to develop Jack Driscoll, maybe spin off Isaac Seumalo if you can for a safety. Chuck Clark, are you listening, Baltimore? A lot of different ways how we can go with it. But I do think Isaac is valuable at the bare minimum. We talk about the Eagles' depth, and they have unbelievable depth on the offensive line compared to other teams in the NFL. But if you start losing Andre Dillard and Isaac Seumalo, well, there's a big difference between those guys and LaRaven Clark and Suo Opeta. So it drops off pretty quickly. It's kind of a tightrope when you talk about depth on the offensive line. And nobody knows about losing offensive linemen more than the Eagles over the past couple of years. So it's important to have those guys.
Absolutely. And I'm like you said, they've experienced what it's like to not have enough depth. So they don't want to be caught short here, which is why I think they'll go on the side of caution here and not, unless there's an offer made, like you mentioned, getting a safety that could really help them defensively. Maybe you do that deal. Otherwise, I think you stand pat and have these guys in case somebody gets hurt.
Which is probably going to happen at some point.
Oh yeah,
it has happened in years past. And Lane's not getting younger. Jason, obviously at his age, and they've added Cam Jurgens as well. But people forget, Jordan Mailata at his size, he's had some back injuries in the past. He's had some, issues with that. And, the assumption that he's going to be there, the assumption that anybody's going to be there for 17 games, as you mentioned, we talk about with the increase and what it does to the body is kind of, you have to start thinking about depth a little bit more than even in the past. I would say.
Yeah, and with 17 games, also, you're going to see more and more teams kind of figure out a way to rotate, to control the number of snaps guys are taking, so that you don't get to week 18 and a guy's got nothing left in the tank for the playoffs. So even if guys don't get hurt, you might want to consider occasionally rotating guys in.
All right, Damo, need another prediction out of you. Which of your Eagle brethren, McMullen included, will be the one to write the article about A.J. Brown takes Devontae Smith under his wing? The mentor-protege relationship, which I think is always overstated. Oh, remember how Tyrese Maxey was like a puppy dog following around James Harden his first week here in town? How'd that work out? Anyway, you got the veteran wide receiver, veteran of all of 3 years as compared to the second-year guy in Devontae Smith. Is that you've been covering teams long enough, Damo. How often is that actually the case, that a guy really learns from a teammate who comes in from out of town, new guy, new face, has more of a resume? Is that a legit thing?
If Devontae came from Liberty University and hadn't played 4 years at Alabama, I could see where having an elder statesman to kind of guide him would help. He doesn't need any help. Devontae is starting with his training. I forget who wrote a story during the offseason on just what he went, what his training regimen, And so I think there'll be chemistry between them. I think they'll work well together. But I don't think AJ Brown is going to have any impact on Devontae as far as guiding him into the next level.
Yeah, it was Josh. I'll give Josh Tolentino credit. He got that old Inquirer budget, Tomo. You know that. They sent him down there, so that was good. He got and Devontae, I got to tell you, he's the weird because he's 166 pounds soaking wet. We talk about it ad nauseum coming out of the draft, but he's really strong he's got these massive hands. He's just a weird makeup that you don't expect, and he's really strong. So I'll go this direction with you when it comes to the receivers, not the mentor-mentee relationship, but getting the football. Now we start to talk about, embarrassment of riches. We talked about this team can't find a receiver. Now you got to get the ball to AJ Brown. You got to get the ball to Devontae Smith. You got to get the ball to Dallas Goedert. I'm not even worried about the Quaz Watkins of the world because you can't be worried about it. Is everybody going to be happy now that there's so many potential difference makers on the offensive side of the football?
That's always a delicate balance, John. And right now we don't know, how much 11 personnel they're going to play as opposed to 12 personnel. You got a guy like Miles Sanders who's getting close to hoping to get another contract, which I'm skeptical he's going to get here. But he needs touches. He needs both in the passing game and the run game. Is he going to get them? Is he going to be happy if he doesn't? I think AJ Brown will be fine. I think the receivers will be okay. And Goddard's already got his new deal, so
that's true. Money will make you happy.
Yeah, now is not the time to cry. So
then AJ Brown should be the happiest of all.
Yes,
and I think the thing is they love Jalen Hurts so much. I mean, the one thing this kid is a great leader, and his receivers aren't going to whine and complain about him not getting them the ball. I mean, at least not publicly. They might try to campaign and lobby with him on the side, but I think I don't think that's going to be a major issue. I'm just curious to see how this offense is going to run. I mean, they're not going to run the ball as much as they did last year, but they're still going to, there's going to be some sort of balance. And there's, we're going to find out how Nick is going to do that, but we won't know that until until week 1.
By the way, I'm predicting Devontae Smith listed at least 175 when the Eagles come out with the official measurements pound. I'm guaranteeing you they bump him up a couple of pounds this year, and he will have put on at least some muscle during the offseason. Just a prediction from yours truly. You mentioned Miles Sanders. Our buddy Jeff Knox from Inside the Eagles had a spot on his website the other day about what a Miles Sanders contract could look like. Tapped into a sport track expert to project exactly what kind of deal he could qualify for. And he said 3 years, $12 million, which is only 4 and change a year. Not outrageous, but you're making a commitment going forward. If he were to sign and I think he said at that dollar, he'd be the 19th highest paid back in the NFL, which is not outrageous by any stretch of the imagination. If something like that were in the offing, would the Eagles do something like that, Damo?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you're right. The money wouldn't be awful. But, they got to ask themselves, do they want, going forward, do they want 2 backs that are so similar as him and Gainwell? And Gainwell's more of an accomplished receiver than Sanders is. So, I mean, if Miles, the thing that frustrates me about Miles, even, this far into his career, is he still won't take the ball inside. I mean, it's not his, unless he has no choice. And he has to. And I don't know that he's ever going to learn that. And, I don't think he's a natural receiver. He can catch the ball, but he's not like Gainwell. Where you can line up anywhere on the field. He can run wide receiver routes. No matter what the contract is, I can't see Sanders taking that deal, a deal like that. I think he'd want more. Thinks he can get more somewhere else. So, I just don't think he's going to be here for a second contract.
Yeah, it's going to be a tough one for Miles coming in on that contract year. And I think Nick Sirianni loves the committee approach as well. So that's part of it. He's going to get Kenny Gainwell involved, and who knows? We'll see if Boston Scott and anyone else. And we'll give Kennedy Brooks a shout out. Oklahoma kid, Dama. Could potentially make this team in the Jordan Howard spot. So we'll see. And now that we have the 16-man practice squad, Damo, they're going to keep that. Maybe Jordan Howard will get the phone call now, and they'll stash him on the practice squad because nobody else ever calls Jordan. So who knows?
Exactly.
I'll end it here with you. I want to go to the 33rd team, so everyone can read Damo there, and he's going to be on JAKIBSports.com as well as we get closer to the season. Mike Tannenbaum, who former GM in this league, is doing a group of tier articles that I've liked over at the 33rd team, and he did the quarterbacks, and he had 7 different tiers sort of amongst the starters or people that could potentially be starters, and he had Jalen Hurts way down in tier 6. And tier 6 are players that you can win with if the situation around them is ideal. A little bit too harsh, or is that where Jalen Hurts should be until he proves otherwise?
Yeah, I might have moved him up 1 tier, but I think Mike's in the Chris Sims category. Not big on Jalen. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that don't think his arm's strong enough. Don't think his decision-making ever will be good enough to be an elite quarterback. I think he does have to prove himself, but right now I might have put him up 1 more tier than Mike did.
All right, so then let me finish with you in trying to evaluate Jalen even further. If Chris Sims has him 25th, and oh, by the way, has Carson Wentz 19th, the latest grouping of Sims's list came out today, and we knew Carson was on there somewhere. He's at 19. Jalen was at 25. And, yeah, he put all those second-year quarterbacks just ahead of him, Wilson and Fields, and I forget who the third one was.
Trevor Lawrence.
Lawrence, right. And Mac Jones is up there with Carson Wentz in the teens. And Tannenbaum had him down on tier number 7. What statistic? We can all judge by our eyes, and 3 relatively well-spoken football guys been watching for a long time. I think we can say, listen, we've seen a lot of quarterbacks. Here's what we see. Here's what we know. People want numbers. People want to have a statistic they can grab onto in the analytical world in which we live. You got to give me something behind just I know what I see. What statistic, what category do you think Jalen Hurts really needs to take? Not just a step up, but a major step up to get guys who are going to do these rankings next year to be able to hang their hat on and go, yeah, I got to make Jalen Hurts a top half of the NFL rankings type player because he did this last year. What's the category that you think can move the needle most in people's evaluations of Jalen?
Well, Jody, I think there's 2 that I use a lot when I'm trying to gauge the quality of a quarterback, and that's third down passing and red zone passing. You look at the great quarterbacks; both of them excel in those areas because they have to. I mean, that's how you move the football. That's how you score points. Jalen has struggled in those areas. Last year, his numbers weren't very good. Some of it was circumstantial, them running the ball so much and him running the ball so much. I mean, he only had 4 red zone touchdown passes in the last 8 games. I mean, that's a horrible number. But again, there were some circumstances. He also had, 10 rushing touchdowns. I mean, a lot of times when they were in the red zone, he was running it rather than throwing it. But those numbers have to improve. I mean, he has to be, somebody on what he's got to find a receiver, whether it's Goddard, whether it's A.J. Brown, somebody that becomes his guy in the red zone like Wentz when he was playing well had with Zach Ertz. And then on third down, he needs to excel. I mean, they need to stay out of 3rd and long, but when he gets in a 3rd and 5, he needs to be like along the lines of a Brady, where that's kind of automatic. You're going to get that first down because you're going to find somebody open. And unless they drop it, it's going to be a first down. So those are 2 categories I look at, Jody.
Yeah, I like both of them. They are keys that we can keep our eye on. And we'll see if the tight end, you mentioned Brady, that Gronk guy. Wonder if he's going to go back and play again this year. Still not signed with the Buccaneers. If Goddard becomes that guy for her, it should be very interesting. Damo, looking forward to you joining the team at JAKIBSports.com. We'll continue reading on the 33rd team as well. And we'll be punching you right back up here on Birds 365 in a couple of weeks. Thanks for jumping on today.
Thanks for having me, guys. Take care.
Paul Domowitch here with us on Birds 365. We'll be along with my partner, John McMullen, a contributor on JAKIBSports.com. Go ahead and mark that down as one of your must-travel-to websites on a day-in, day-out spaces right there on your screen. JAKIBSports.com, which John McMullen, I think, is doing 22 articles a day for now.
Yeah. JAKIBSports.com. Bird Street, your one-stop shop is what I'm calling it, Jody, because you can get all the articles, but you can get the shows. You can get Birds 365. So instead of searching for it, Sports Take Guys, National Football Show, you get it all in one spot. You can subscribe, join the email list, subscribe to the YouTube page, like, share, do it all. Do it all. JAKIBSports.com.
At JAKIBSports.com. All right, McDonald and McMullen coming back here. Hoping to hear from Clark Judge. I just got a text from Clark. Should be good to go. National football writer on Talk of Fame.
Yeah, we got 2 Hall of Fame guys. How about that? I didn't think of it.
I didn't bring that up with Dama. We should have done that.
Yeah.
There's how many on the?
Too much.
60-something? I should know this number off the top of my head. I think they have 60-some odd Hall of Fame voters. And if you got 2 of the 60-something on one given show, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I forgot that Damo's just our buddy, but he is still the Philadelphia representative for the Hall of Fame. Clark Judge, another Hall of Fame voter, will be joining us a little bit later here on Birds 365.
Go for the poles and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
At Action News, we cherish every moment, and it's our profound responsibility to bring you closer to your world. Never miss a moment. Trust the people at Action News.
All right, did you know I was the Mommy Slam Dunk Champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, up, up.
She did it.
Again?
You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
You got Mag and Mac with you here on Birds 365 on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel, which you can access through JAKIBmediasports.com. However, you got a hold of us. Thanks for jumping in, streaming in with us today on this OTA Thursday, which John McMullen suggests he could be getting an email today that says, come on down to the...
I expect that text at 6 tonight. 6-ish after business hours.
Is that usually the way they did do it? Wait till after they don't give you a full day's notice in advance?
Yeah, it depends. It always depends, but haven't gotten it yet, so I'm expecting the 6 o'clock.
What does it depend on?
Schedule, the head coach, how he wants to set things up, and they have to work around the schedule. So they do, I'll give the PR people credit. They do need to, carve out these times to where are we going to get to talk to the players, the coaches, before practice or after practice, things like that. So they have to figure out the windows is basically the bigger problem. But, maybe a little forward planning, maybe.
No, it's been a couple of months since any kind of workout / activity has been attached to media availability that you guys have gotten. Last year, now of course Nick Sirianni went behind the ears just getting underway with his first couple Eagle workouts, handled it one way. It did change at one point during the season last year, if I remember correctly, and I'm not one of you guys. I'm not there every single day. Didn't he go from after practice to before practice? How do you think it's going to lay out with your getting a chance to pick Nick's brain?
I think it's going, you're right. It sort of became a comfort level, and he went, I think it was before and then after, which after is better because you got to see what happened on the field. But it's all timing and what he feels comfortable with. And, these 2 days, because they're going to have one day open this week, one day open next week, they're just trying to get through them. I don't think it's going to tell us much about the training camp schedule or the regular season schedule, which is a lot easier, the regular season, because you don't have to open up the whole practice and all that kind of stuff. So it basically comes down to what the coach is more comfortable with. And, there's coaches who want to be more clandestine and then they want to talk before practice because they don't have to deal with all the questions about practice and vice versa. Some like it, some don't want to deal with it. They want to focus on what they want to get accomplished. So it's all the feel of the coach, really.
And that's true. And the head coach is the one who's implementing everything. And with the Eagles this offseason compared to last offseason, compared to the year before, there have been some pretty good changes. And every team in the NFL changes every single year, but some change more than others. Be interesting to see how the changes affect the Eagles this year. We know they're going to be actually doing less. Nick is on. He's already online, having said that they're not going to do much 11 on 11. Not in the OTAs.
None. Zero.
None.
No 11 on 11.
And during these OTAs before they get to camp. So Jonathan Gannon needs to take his marching orders from the head coach, because the head coach and how he decide how much work is actually going to get done. And then the head coach tells his coordinators, here's the time you're going to have, and here's how we're going to go about doing this. I think Gannon's the one who's actually a little handicapped here, because I think the Eagles' defense will be more different this year compared to last year than the Eagles offense will be. Yeah, you're plugging in A.J. Brown, which is going to be a major upgrade for the offense, but the offense is still very similar to the one that they finished up last season with. We got a chance to have a significantly different defense this year, which I'm sure Jonathan Gannon would like to get his hands on ASAP and actually start to evaluate the best way to use these players. Only he's not going to get much of a chance to do that in OTAs, is he?
No, certainly. But I mean, part of it is he'll get to look at the back seven. He'll get to look at the corners and safeties, which might be the most important part of it all because there's such uncertainty at safety, and there's, you got to integrate James Bradbury into the mix. He'll get plenty of time to look at those guys in 7-on-7s. The brunt, what can you do anyway? There's no physicality. So that's kind of what I was talking about with Damo. It's like you're not allowed to practice it. So it's more about teaching and fundamentals and technique work. And they'll be doing all that stuff in individual drills. And then you don't know about the physicality until you have to be physical. And you're not allowed to be physical. So we're not going to learn anything about Jordan Davis as far as that part of the game and what kind of impact he's going to have, just like the offensive line. But we know the difference is we've seen enough of Jason Kelce and Lane Johnson and even Jordan Mailata and Landon Dickerson as young players. You've seen it. You've seen how physical they are, and it's going to show up when it needs to show up. You don't know that about Jordan Davis. You hope. You don't know. We've talked about the impact, but you don't know. You don't know what Hassan Reddick's going to look like in this overhang sort of defense that Jonathan Gannon is envisioning because we haven't seen it. We've seen him in Carolina and Arizona, so a little bit from that standpoint, but until you see how it integrates here, the linebackers we've talked a lot about, because how do you fit those three pieces together? TJ Edwards, Kaiser White, and Kobe Dean. We're not going to get a lot of that until training camp, how it fits together.
Right. So,
but you'll get to look at the back seven a little bit.
Well, I was going to say back seven. Is it really the back seven or is it the back four? If you're not going to be able to judge the linebackers, that kind of reduces 7-4, does it not?
Well, 7-on-7s is the back seven. So you are going to have some linebackers mixing in, probably, and it's going to be interesting from that point. And, who's the nickel linebackers, who's the dime linebacker, at least early on. You generally aren't going to play, dime a whole heck of a lot, even in the modern NFL. You're not going to have 7 defensive backs on the field. Maybe, in 3rd and 30 situations, you might have it, but not much other than that. So you'll get to see a little bit of the linebackers, but only in pass coverage. So much of the linebacker position, even today, is about, all right, yeah, you got to cover people, but you also have to be able to at least be serviceable in run support.
Sure.
And the serviceable in run support part of it, we're not going to know, Jody. We're not going to know until the pads come on, really.
Right.
That you never know, but that's every team.
That's why I think Jonathan Gannon is kind of up against it here with these 6 days of OTAs. What is he really going to be able to learn? Not all of a lot, because how do you incorporate Jordan Davis into the offensive line? What kind of effect does it have? We're all suspecting that Hassan Reddick is going to be a major part of the Eagles' defense this year. But is it going to be as a defensive end? Is it going to be as a Sam linebacker outside a defensive end? We're not going to get any clue of that during the next couple of weeks here until they actually put on pads, until they actually practice 11-on-11. We're all just speculating. Jonathan Gannon, would probably like to get some answers, but even if he get them, he wouldn't tip his hand and tell anybody. So they'll probably keep it under wraps when you guys are allowed in there. That's the thing that intrigues me about this team right now. And Jalen Hurts is the quarterback, and we're all going to talk about Jalen Hurts and everybody's list as to where he falls and what his future is. And the Eagles tried to get a better quarterback in Deshaun Watson and Russell Wilson, but now they're staying with Jalen. Yeah, the offense is the offense, and we know the offense drives the attention bus. But I think the more intriguing aspect of the Eagles this year is going to be the defense, because they've upgraded the talent. They've given Jonathan Gannon, quote unquote, weapons to work with. He's a debatable individual. Some people love him. Some people can't stand him. I think he did a pretty darn good job. If it's either a yay or a nay answer, I'd be more yay than nay, but I understand that last year he didn't have the ability to do everything he wanted. Will he have more of an ability to do that with the roster changes the Eagles have made? Yeah, it's kind of frustrating that we think that we could be getting answers, but we're going to get nothing out of these 2 weeks of OTA.
And I kind of look at it a little bit differently. I don't look at it offense versus defense. I look at it passing game versus running game. You know, how many times have I said it, Jody? Nobody cares about the running game. And I say it in April. I say it in May. Now I'll say it in June. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. Nobody pays attention to it. Part of it is not only the way the game is shifted, but part of it is you can't care about it this time of year. There's nothing you can do anyway. I mean, you can hand the ball off. Kennedy Brooks, I was talking about with Damo, his wife's an Oklahoma gal. So, you know, is Kennedy Brooks going to be an undrafted rookie that might surprise people? Well, how the heck am I going to know? There's no pads. There's no physicality. I don't know what he's going to be able to do at the point of attack. I don't know if Kaiser White is a glorified safety playing linebackers. He's going to get run over by the Landon Dickersons of the world pulling, or Jordan Mailata. I don't know, because we're not going to get to see that. And it works on both sides of the ball. So we'll get to see the chemistry of the quarterback and the receivers, and we'll get to see the chemistry of the corners and the safeties. But then versus the running game, we're not going to get to see how Jordan Davis fits or Hassan Reddick, but we're also not going to see, you know, what are the running backs like at the point of attack. Here's the difference, though, Jody. We know the Eagles can run the football. We know how good the offensive line is. We know what the quarterback means to the running game as sort of that +1. So it was Miles Sanders, 5.5 yards per carry. You know, Boston Scott, 7 touchdowns and limited touches. Everybody, Kenny Gainwell, Jordan Howard, everybody could run the football behind that offensive line. Everybody. We don't know that about the defense. One of the biggest problems with the defense, their inability to stop the run. And the opposing offenses were too often in third and short situations. So we don't know that about the defense. So it is going to be more frustrating for the defense. But I think overall it's passing game we learn a little about, running game we learn zero. Zip. Give me the Jody Mack 0. I mean, not 100% when we do, I'll leave it open 2%. No, 0% about the running game.
All right, but let me follow up with a question. And again, appreciate to all our streamers, not only those of you who are tuning in, but those of you who comment in our comment section. Guy commented just a couple of minutes ago, Tom Carey, we need a power running back. I still want to pound the rock and keep our OL happy. How much of that is actually a factor, John? I guess
they like to run the ball.
I'm asking you to jump into the mind of Nick Sirianni and Kevin Patullo and everyone who's involved with putting the Eagle game plan together on a week in, week out basis. You just yourself mentioned how good our offensive line is. That's why the Eagles led the league in rushing last year. How much of the decision-making factor on play calling is, and oh, by the way, the offensive line loves it. They love to go forward. Every offensive line that I've ever read about, talked about, covered, everybody would prefer to run block than pass block if you're on the offensive line, because you're initiating contact. You're going forward. You're the guy who's taking the first step advantage rather than going backwards and having your opponent try and beat you or dictate to you. How much is that actually a factor in your mind? You know, the only first year with Sirianni, so you've had a year to analyze his game plan and get to know him and try and match wits with him. How much do you think actually comes into play? Yeah, we can really make our offensive linemen happy by calling running plays.
I was going to go, when you were talking, I was going to go 0%, but I won't go 0. I'll go up to 5%. Sometimes when you're in the game and, you know, people get fired up and the offensive line is blowing people off the ball, maybe Lane will go up to Nick and say, let's go, you know, something like that. And, you know, you keep riding the momentum. So I'll say a little bit, but not much more than that. You know, it's a passing league. It is what it is. And that you saw the Eagles in the first 7, really 6 games. You know, they wanted to throw the ball. They really did. They just couldn't. And Nick, not consistently at least. And Nick, to his credit, adjusted, and that's what good head coaches do. And he said, you know what? I got a really young quarterback who's still learning. I got maybe the best offensive line in football. Let's ride the offensive line. And they shifted, and they made the playoffs because of it, and he deserves credit for it. But they know long-term, and this starts with Jeffrey Lurie. We started the show talking about Jeffrey and Julian Lurie. It comes from Jeffrey Lurie on down. You know, this is a passing league. We want a high-octane passing offense. They want a ahead of the curve when it comes to imagination passing offense. They just paid a wide receiver $100 million. As you just mentioned, as Damo just mentioned, they just gave Dallas Goedert a big-time extension for a tight end. They want to throw the football. They drafted Devontae Smith at number 10 overall. They don't want to not use these players. They want to throw the football. But if they get into week 4 and they start struggling, and Nick says, we can't win games like this because the quarterback can't do it consistently, he'll go back to what he did last year.
Here's where I like your number of 5%. You're right. It's not 0, but it's damn close to 0. I'll give you where it is 0. First possession, second possession, third possession. The only time that I think that actually creeps into the mind of the play caller is up by 2 scores, minimum of double digits, and you're in the second half of a game. If you're in the second half of a game and you got a 2nd and 5, you say, can keep the clock running, and I can make my offensive lineman happy, choosing between a running play and a passing play. Yeah, let me throw a bone to the O-line. Let him go nuts. Let him drive block. Let me call a running play. That's when it comes into play. Only time. First period, second period. No, you got to be up by double digits and then looking to keep the clock rolling when you would let it factor into your thinking that, yeah, let me give the offensive line what they want. They'd rather run block than they'd rather pass.
It's a momentum thing, and you just nailed it down to a specific situation. You know, game day on the field, success, yeah, you might say, all right, let me throw him a bone. It's purely a momentum thing, but nobody's trying, we got to make Lane Johnson, Jason Kelsey happy during the week game planning. No, doesn't work like that.
Not coming into play. All right, Mac guy's going to take a timeout. Clark Judge from Talk of Fame scheduled to join us for the final half an hour of today's show. Mac talking to Clark Judge of Talk of Fame next on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
At Action News, we cherish every moment, and it's our profound responsibility to bring you closer to your world. Never miss a moment. Trust the people at Action News.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, go to left, fake 'em out. Mama, go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh. Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
Maga guys, John McMullen and Jody McDonald here with you on Birds 365. We're adding a third voice to the list. He is a writer and host on Talk of Fame's network and also host on the I Test for Two podcast. I got to tell you, Clark Judge, that's one of the best names I've come across for podcasts. I love it. Thank you very much for joining us here today.
Yeah, thanks for the plug, Jody. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I like the title too, Clark, and I like the whole mentality, especially for a Hall of Fame voter. I like that thought process because I think we lose some of that eye test over the years. But I guess we'll start out because I always love when we have Hall of Fame voters. And we had Domo on, by the way, earlier. This is a Hall of Fame show, Clark.
Domo's one of the greats. He's one of the greats. I love Paul.
He truly is. And I want to look because we know who's going in this year, and it's coming up very quickly, obviously. But I want to start looking at next year's class.
Yeah.
And Jody's a Jets fan. I think you know that. And that's one guy I look at, Darrelle Revis. Revis Island, I think, has an opportunity to be that first ballot Hall of Famer. Then after Darrelle, who would you say are the most impressive sort of first-time candidates?
I'd put somebody ahead of Darrelle. I put Joe Thomas ahead of him.
Oh, okay.
I think Joe Thomas is a lock. I'm not convinced that Darrelle is a lock. I think he probably will be. We've had a penchant for first ballot Hall of Famers lately. This year, that's not the case. We didn't have one first ballot Hall of Famer, and that broke a run in the last 4 years. Of the 20 Hall of Famers, modern era, I'm talking about modern era, 10 of those 20 or half the classes have been first ballot. And that's an issue with some of the voters, including me, because I think first ballot should be reserved for those who you don't have to get up and make a case for. So you stand up and say, Jim Brown, and you sit down. Stand up and say, Joe Montana. But that's happened. I mean, when Ira Miller made Joe Montana's case, he stood up and said, Joe Montana, and sat down. Peyton Manning had happened, and then I remember Brett Favre, the voter from Green Bay, Pete Doherty, said, "I've got a speech here." And he looked around the room. He goes, "What am I doing with this speech?" He just threw it up in the air. He goes, "Brett Favre," and that was it. We applauded and said thank you, and let's move on. So I think those are the first ballot guys. So this year, I'm talking about 2022, the most likely guy was DeMarcus Ware. But you don't stand up and say DeMarcus Ware and sit down. And there was a convincing case made by Rick Gosselin for him. And I thought he'd probably make it, A, because certainly Hall of Fame worthy. And secondly, because we've been inclined to put as many first ballot guys in as we can. That didn't happen. And I was really glad to see what we did. There was a cleanup, including Sam Mills, of course, who you guys know from Philadelphia with the Stars. But it was good to see, because there were guys who've been waiting at the door, and those are the guys I feel for. They're waiting and waiting. What's the hurry unless there's a Joe Montana or Jerry Rice or Jim Brown that comes along? And so next year, I think Joe Thomas is that guy. Darrelle Revis probably is that guy, and I would think those two would be the most likely. Then I'd have to look. I know Dumerville's up. I'm trying to think who else is on there. Maybe James. No, not James Harrison. Anyway, but there are numbers of guys who.
James is up. James Harrison. So he's with Dwight Freeney.
Dwight Freeney was the guy I was trying to think of. Yeah. But Dwight Freeney is up there with Robert Mathis now. Now Robert Mathis he was waiting, this year, and so do Mathis and Freeney split the vote. Who do you like better? And they probably do split the vote. So one of those two goes in first. I would think both eventually get in, but who goes in first? Is Freeney jumping? And is Freeney a guy that you go Dwight Freeney and sit down? No, he's not. But I'm probably in the minority on that. But I know there are a number of people in that group who feel like that, as I do, that you need to simply say the name and sit down, because that's what first ballot should be. Hasn't quite been that way, honestly, since 2017, when Jason Taylor became a first ballot Hall of Famer. And I'm not knocking Jason Taylor. No, he's a Hall of Famer, but it surprised everyone, including Armando Salguero from Miami, who was presenting him, who thought, I never saw that happening. And Jason Taylor told us later, he didn't see it happening either.
It's interesting, Clark. Sorry, Jody, before you jump in, because I got to cover the Vikings earlier in my career. So the Denny Green sort of Vikings, and there are a lot of Hall of Famers in that era. And I thought to myself, there were two guys, Chris Dolman, John Randall, who I said they're going to be Hall of Famers, but they're probably going to have to wait a little bit. And they got in really quick. And I would say Randall McDaniel was the one guy I said, well, he's he's going in right away. He didn't. He had to wait a little bit. So my question is more on positioning. And you mentioned Jason Taylor, edge rushers. You guys seem to have, and by you guys I mean Hall of Fame voters, really put an emphasis on pass rushers. And is that fair or unfair?
I don't know that it's either. I think it's just sort of a reality. I mean, who do general managers prize? Cornerbacks, pass rushers, and quarterbacks. And so I look at that and think you're right, John. You're absolutely right, because Randall McDaniel would say, well, sure. I mean, he should go in very quickly. But we've got blind spots towards interior linemen, guards and centers in particular. Look at the number of centers that have been put in the last 23 years, I think 22 years too, and Kevin Mawai was the latest. And Demonte Dawson was before him. But so we've got kind of blind spots towards certain positions, and guards another one. And I think of a couple guys who came out, and I'm trying to think of Kansas City guard, Will Shields. And Will Shields was bulletproof. I mean, he had 14 years. I think it was 12 Pro Bowls, 7 All-Pros, never missed a practice, never missed a game. And he waited 4 years. And I remember in that room, I just said, what are we missing here? But we just sort of wait. Alan Faneca, same thing, just wait. And eventually they get in. And to me, I think that was sort of an injustice to Will Shields, except he's in the Hall of Fame. And that's the thing is, that's why I think first ballot to me has a different meaning than maybe some people think. But to me, it should be the best of the best of the best, and very difficult to get. But in the end, those guys eventually become Hall of Famers. And as someone pointed out to me a long time ago, what do they call the guy who graduated last in his class in med school? They call him doctor. They call him doctor, So they're all the same. No one says you graduated last year. No, you're a doctor. These guys are in the Hall of Fame. So in the end, we get it right. But there are some oversights that that make me sad. And hopefully we'll be able to clean some of that up now with the expanded senior committee and the expanded number of seniors per year for the next 3 years at least.
Once you get that gold jacket, it's the same exact color for all those who get a chance to wear it. So it doesn't matter first time, second time, 20th time. I want to talk to you about that cleanup, because another name that I know Ray Didinger, I had a chance to talk to over the weekend.
Great guy. Well, I respect Ray as much as anyone in the business, really. And It's too bad he's not on the committee now. I mean, we miss someone like him.
Ray's retiring from his radio gig, so
I'm sorry to hear that.
To just hang with him the other day and shoot the breeze. And he once again said something to me about a conversation Ray and I have had on the air 20 times over the years, and that's Joe Klecko's Hall of Fame status. Ray's a Temple guy. Joe is a Temple guy. I'm a Jet guy. Both Ray and I know Joe, and both of us look at him as a Hall of Famer. You talk about edge rushers. He was an edge rusher when they needed him to be. He was a tackle when they needed him to be. He was a nose tackle when they needed him to be. He checked all those boxes, and he has been waiting. Never got in through the front door. Can he get in through that side door now with the expanded number of seniors that are being added going forward for the Hall of Fame, in your opinion?
He can, and he might. I'm not saying that's going to happen, Jody, because I think recently he hasn't really been one of the last final finishers in that senior pool, but they're only taking one each year. And so you're taking one senior from the last, 70, 80 years. I mean, that includes a lot of people. So he hasn't been a guy, I think, that's really high on the radar. But now when you're going to 9 guys in the next 3 years and a possibility of 18 over the next 6, talking to Jim Porter, the Hall of Fame president, he said, I don't rule anything out. We said we revisit this after 3 years. But we may go another 3 years by saying 3 seniors again for the next 3, meaning 6 in total. He wants to get it right. And there is a real feeling within that room that Klecko's one of those guys we should be discussing. That doesn't mean he should be in. He should be discussing. That's what you want. You want the case in front of you to say, was it Klecko? Was it Gastineau? Who was it here that people feared? Who was it? And Klecko was a Pro Bowler at 3 different defensive positions. That really helps his case. I think he's got a chance, but there are a lot of people. I didn't cover the Jets. I covered the Chargers, the Colts, and the 49ers. And when I covered the 49ers, I was sort of surprised that Roger Craig only was a finalist once. And then you look at those 49er teams of the 1980s, and as great as they were, they won 4 Super Bowls. How many guys from the offense are in the Pro Football Hall of Fame from that 49ers offense? And I'll tell you how many. 2. Joe Montana and Jerry Rice, who wasn't there for 2 of the 4 Super Bowls. So you're going to tell me that team was carried by one guy? And as great as Joe Montana was, he wasn't carried by one guy. Now, there are people defensively who are on that team. But then I look at, and again, I'm not trying to knock them, but we look at the St. Louis Rams. They won, 1 Super Bowl? Kurt Warner, Marshall Faulk, Orlando Pace, Isaac Bruce, and we've got Torrey Holt as a finalist.
Torrey Holt, yeah.
So how dominant were they? They won 1 Super Bowl. So those are the things we've got to sort of re-examine. I thought you're going back, Jody. I thought I want to go way back with the Eagles. Al Wistert's the guy that is under my skin. He's a guy that I could not believe wasn't inducted with the Centennial class. I've been on his case for a long time. Deserves to be in. I don't know what's missing. 9 years, I think 8 All-Pros, 2 times NFL champion, all decade. What's he missing? And what he's missing is he got forgotten. That's what happened. He fell through the cracks. And so you've energized people who never saw him and say, this was a dominant player. If you ran that resume past any voter today, I'd run it past you and say, here's player X, played 9 years, 8 All-Pros, 2-time Super Bowl champion, all decade. He was the captain of those Super Bowl champions. What's missing? You go, nothing. Put him in first ballot. He's been a no ballot, and that's the thing that's sad for me.
And I've asked you this before, Clark, but I want to get your thoughts again, because it is, I think, in football even more than other sports, it's difficult because the game has changed so much. So I think the modern fan base gets enamored with these huge offensive statistics. You mentioned the greatest show on turf. It might have started there, really, with that Rams offense.
Eric Coryell. I'd say Eric Coryell with the Chargers.
Yeah. But as far as the outrageous numbers, and I always go to Lynn Swann and John Stolworth and players like that, and even Kenny Stabler as a quarterback, and the numbers are just, they don't look good. They don't look good under a modern lens, and it becomes difficult to explain to somebody who doesn't know how dominant those players were in that era of football. Do you find that difficult in the room? You still have a lot of veteran guys, but as you get newer blood, do you find it more difficult in the room, or is that just more of a sort of sports talk narrative?
No, I find it more difficult in the room, and I'm glad you mentioned that, John, because we opened this, but you guys mentioned the eye test for two, and how you liked it. That numbers, I can't tell you the numbers of people who say, "What does that mean?" What does that mean? I said, "But two people involved, you have to pass the eye test." What's the eye test? And that is talked about in that room, not as much now as it was maybe 10 years ago. But they say, do they pass the eye test? I mean, you watch Joe Montana one game, you go, this guy's something different. You watch Tom Brady, something different, you know. And I would imagine if you watch Al Wister and studied him, you go, this guy stands out. I mean, you just know Jerry Rice stands out, Jim Brown stands out. But I do find it difficult to deal with. I understand it, and I don't like it when people say, I don't mind old school, but you guys are old. You guys are too old. Well, I know what I watched, you know, and you guys know what you watched, and it doesn't mean that it's any better, but it is different. It's a very different game. And so I do know when I saw John Unitas play, because I was a kid, but I loved watching the Colts. He was the best quarterback I'd ever seen because I trusted him to win games. And I don't fall in love with stats as much as I fall in love with who shows up when you need a game to be won. And you look at Michael Jordan, give him the ball. Larry Bird, give him the ball. Unitas, Montana, Jim Brown, give him the ball at the 5-yard line. He's going to get in. Those guys, they're people who make it happen. And so, you know, we've got some people who talk about analytics in there. And I'll never forget when Morton Anderson's candidacy was up. There's some people don't believe that specialists should be in. They should punters, kickers, should be in.
And Justin Tucker should be in right now. Do it right now, Clark.
Well, he'll get in at some point. I think Adam Vinatieri will too. But it took, you know, we've got three.
Yeah.
So Morton Anderson's up. At that time, he's the all-time leading scorer, right?
Yeah.
2-time all-decade. So some guy was giving these stats on indoors, outdoors, left hash mark, right hash mark. And I'll never forget, there was someone in the room who said, wait a second. All I know about Morton Anderson is for 2 decades, he was the best at his position.
Yes.
He's the all-time leading scorer. For 2 decades, he was the best at his position. All-time leading scorer. Every other sport has their all-time leading scorer in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. What are we doing here? At which point, another voter closed the conversation by saying, let's just admit it. We're not putting in punters or kickers. Let's tell them right now. We're not putting them in. No, that's not what we're saying. That closed the door. It was a contentious argument, but I was glad to hear it because there were both sides. It was good. No hard feelings, but there was good feeling. But and he got in. He got in for the right reasons. He was an elite kicker. I don't care what his percentages were. He won games and he was the best at his position for 2 decades.
Well, I think, sorry, Jody, I know, but a specialist. I talk about Ray Guy all the time.
Me too.
Because I know, like here in Philadelphia where we are, Clark, they want to run out Aaron Cepas, the punter, on a rail because he was terrible down the stretch of the last season. Ray Guy, I think, had 1 year where he was had a better, net punting average than Aaron Cepas, who Eagles fans think is terrible because the game has changed. Mm-hmm. He was the best punter for how many years? By far, by a stretch, he was so much better than his peers. That's what I can't get people to understand. Judge people with their peers, not with different eras. Is that a difficult part of your job to sort of convince people?
I guess it's difficult, but it's necessary. That's the way to do it because you can't compare today's wide receivers with yesterday's. If I were playing quarterback, Jody and John, you guys are wide receivers, and you run, you go in motion. I take the snap and I pitch the ball to you 2 feet in front of me, and you catch it. That's a completion, right? That's a completion. So I've not 100% pass completion percentage. And so it's become more of a horizontal passing game than a vertical passing game. And again, when I was mentioning Unitas, I mean, I talked to several historians who say if you watch the tape, and I watched zillions of games, but I watched him. He was the greatest downfield and most accurate down the field passer that I saw. Plus, if you watch his ball handling, people talk about Peyton Manning. Yeah, he was great in play action. Watch Unitas. Does Lenny Moore have the ball? LG Dupre. Who's got the ball? You don't know. And then Unitas throwing the ball down the field. And so I grew up enamored with him. And I remember saying to my father, have you ever seen anything like this? My father said, you ever heard of Otto Graham? I mean, and Otto Graham, 10 years, 10 championship games, 7 championships. And again, if that were today, we'd be saying he's the greatest of all time. He's not on the radar of a lot of people because he's an old timer. The game's changed. And yet in his era, he was the best of his era. Unitas was the best of his era. That counts for a lot. So when I see these inflated numbers today, 1,700 yards, 1,800 yards, passing completion, 70% in it, it's a different game. I mean, Darryl Lamonica was the mad bomber, right? It was because he threw the ball down the field a lot. Bradshaw had 2 more touchdown passes than interceptions. A different game. They were mauling receivers at the line of scrimmage. That's why they put in the Mel Blount rule, for God's sakes, and he was on Bradshaw's team. But that's I find. You're getting me worked up here because I'm a history major.
Well, I'm
a history major, and I'm talking about American history, but I love history in general. And I have a tough time abiding by it when people disregard history, because I'm a big believer in that phrase of those who can't remember history are condemned to repeat it. I mean, I believe in that. So there are lessons there, and we watch that and we evolve. The game has evolved. It's a different game now. Doesn't mean it's better or worse. It's a different game. But to say someone, and I had someone say to me recently when I mentioned Paul Warfield, one of the great receivers, I went, Paul Warfield, you see the number of catches he had each year? I said, you just see him play. He was in an offense that ran the freaking ball. I mean, averaged almost 20 yards a catch. What are you talking about? But that doesn't matter. It's just bigger is better, and latest is the greatest. And so you do have to combat that. And ultimately it comes down to, oh, wait a second, how old are you? Oh, you're an old timer. But that's what you sort of have to combat.
Clark, John, and I could talk history and old-time football with you for hours, but unfortunately, we've only got about 10 or 12 minutes left of the show. So I do want to get a 2022 question in. Yep. Another guy whose opinion I know you respect, I respect, John respects, Peter King, came out with his 2022 power rankings 10 days ago, somewhere thereabouts. And he had the Eagles in at number 9, which I was a little surprised. I thought it generally in the area where they were going to fall a little bit higher than I thought. 4th overall in the NFC, 9th overall in the NFL. We all give Howie Roseman credit that he has done a nice job upgrading the talent on this roster with his offseason moves. Have they moved into the top 10 for Clark Judge?
I haven't done a top 10. I haven't done a top 32. They probably wouldn't be. But did he have them behind Dallas? Where do you have him in the NFC?
He had him ahead of Dallas and ahead of San Francisco. He had him ahead of San Francisco. The NFC.
Yeah, I think that the interesting thing with San Francisco, and again, I'm going to answer your question, Joey. The interesting thing about San Francisco is who's quarterback in that team. I assume it's Trey Lance. And if that's the case, San Francisco may take a step back. That's the team that I did cover for a while and when they were really, really good. But I think San Francisco's got tremendous talent. Quarterback I worry about. I really do worry about, and I think Joe Montana does as well. The Eagles would not be in my top 10, Jody. I can't tell you why, other than I remember what I saw last year, and there was a lot of inconsistent play. But I think some of the additions they made, Bradbury on the back end, you go with the wide receivers. They certainly seem to improve themselves there. A.J. Brown, of course, but to me, it always comes back to the most important position. Jalen Hurts. What's he going to give you? And I don't know. I don't know. I mean, times when he looks like, whoa, that's the real deal. Times he doesn't. And my last memory was he didn't. I mean, he didn't look like that. So with Dallas, I think they suffered some in the offseason. I don't know how much I believe in them going to the next step for numbers of reasons. Maybe head coaching could be one of them. But that NFC East, to me, is somewhat of a scramble. I mean, people talking about the Giants. Listen, my wife's a Giants fan. The Giants, as soon as they change quarterbacks, they got a chance. But Daniel Jones, I just don't think's the guy there. So is it going to be Washington? I mean, who's quarterback and what? Carson Wentz? So someone told me that they're in Las Vegas. Their odds actually went down after they added Carson Wentz. So I know nobody believes in them. So it's a wide open scramble. But to me, no, I'd say no. 4th in the NFC? No, I'd have to look more carefully. But I mean, I would not put them there. I think that's awfully high. But Peter studies today's game a lot more carefully than I do. So I defer to him. But I'd be curious who's his number 1 overall team, because I know who I'd probably pick as my number 1 overall.
Who did he pick?
I think he had the
number one?
Rams at number 1. I think he
Yeah,
kept the defending
I
champs. at
thought,
number 1.
was that? I see so many lists this
Or
time
was
of
it
year. I
Buffalo?
saw somebody put the Chargers number 1.
No, no.
Yeah,
That's another team again that I covered
because of Justin Herbert. Yeah,
yeah, but then you got to deal with the head coach, and
Yeah,
and people out there. Some of them love him. I'm not one of them. He's an analytics guy. You know, when you
Yeah.
got 4th and 1 at your own 18, last game of the season, it's early in the 3rd quarter, and you need to win that game. You do not go for it. But this is a guy who, in my mind, lost at least 2 games last year that I can remember. That he was, following analytics, and one was an overtime loss to the Chiefs. We just kept going by analytics, and kept losing and losing and losing.
Yeah.
They've got a lot of talent, but I don't trust that head coach. To me, the number 1 team is Buffalo. I mean, Buffalo's the team that
a lot of people at Buffalo.
Yeah, because I thought they were the best team last year, and had they been able to play defense for 13 seconds, they probably, in my mind, I think they would have won. But fact of the matter is,
you don't think that devastating, that kind of loss has a carryover?
It
Because
might.
it is. You're 13 seconds away.
Sure, it might. I mean, you look what happened with Wide Right in Buffalo. That had a devastating loss. Except they kept getting back, going back to the Super Bowl and back to the Super Bowl. But they never really got over that. But I think it could be, and I hope it's a motivating factor for them. 2 reasons. I think they're a really good team, and I'd like to see that quarterback get into Super Bowl just so we could watch him in that kind of arena. But secondly, I love those fans. They're passionate fans, like Philadelphia fans. They're passionate fans. They love that team, and it's been a while. It's been a long time since they've been there. But in answer to your question, Jody, no, I off the top of my head, I'd say no, because I just don't trust Jalen Hurts. I'd have to see more from him.
By the way, just punch up Peter's rankings. He had San Diego number 2. Didn't have him number 1, but he had him number 2. Buffalo 1, San Diego 2, Kansas City 3. Doesn't get to an NFC team till number 4.
Where's he got Green Bay?
Champion Rams.
Where's he have Green Bay?
Rams 4, Green Bay 5.
Wow, that's going to be interesting to see what happens there with some of the offseason losses, especially Devontae Adams. But
last one from me, Clark. I want to get your Hall of Fame crystal ball out when it comes to Philadelphia, because I tell Eagles fans, Malcolm Jenkins just retired. Hall of very good. He's not going to be the conversation for the Hall of Fame seriously, in my mind. Want your thoughts on him? And then I start thinking about Jason Kelce, and I think, you know what? He's getting closer. He's getting closer. He's getting closer. And this might be the last year for Jason Kelce. You mentioned earlier, maybe there's a bit of a blind spot for interior linemen. That hurts him. Malcolm Jenkins, Jason Kelce.
Yeah, I those two. Kelce to me is the more likely. That doesn't again mean he's going in. I'm speaking as one of 49 people, but certainly has the resume for it. As I mentioned, I'd caution you only because of the position he plays. Jenkins actually plays a position that's more likely to get attention, but it's also going to have more of a crowd that people you're going, okay, where does he stand among these people? I think Kelce's the more likely guy. I thought you were going to ask me about LaShawn McCoy, but
Shady. Well, throw Shady in as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy that he's going to be an interesting guy because he'll be in the conversation all decade. 2-time Super Bowl champ, although that came late in his career when he wasn't LaShawn McCoy anymore. But and then I think 6-time Pro Bowl. I mean, he's got all the accolades you want. But I was trying to break him down the other day because I was going to write about him and I decided not to. What's going to end up sort of, I'm not saying hurt him, but the thing that's going to be a factor for him are the people around him on the all-time leading rushers. And Corey Dillon's one of them. And Corey Dillon certainly could be Hall of Fame worthy. He's never been a finalist, never been a semifinalist. Fred Taylor, 16th all-time leading rusher, never been a finalist. He's been a semifinalist the last 3 years. LaShawn McCoy is, I think, somewhere like 23rd and just ahead of Ricky Waters, never been a finalist, I think he's been a semifinalist once. Steven Jackson's ahead of him. Steven Jackson, never been a finalist. So, or semifinalist. So I think LaShawn McCoy will get attention. He might be a semifinalist, could be a finalist. I mean, tough because all those people around, was he better than Ricky Waters? You guys saw Ricky Waters. I saw him in San Francisco when he was but Ricky Waters has the numbers, but it's more than the numbers. And again, guys, it comes back to what we talked about earlier, the eye test, and when Ricky was in San Francisco, to me, I looked down there. There's a budding Hall of Famer, and I saw him in Seattle later in his career, and I was not on the Hall of Fame board at that point. And we talked about that, and I said, "Boy, if you'd stayed in San Francisco, Ricky, they would have won. They would have won more Super Bowls. You would have been a name that people always remembered, and you'd be a certain Hall of Famer." He goes, "I am a certain Hall of Famer." And I was, "Oh, why do you say that?" And he goes, "Did you see my numbers?" I said, "Yeah, I have seen your numbers, but it's more than numbers. It's more than numbers. It's about success too." And unfortunately with Ricky, and I do mean unfortunately that that incident early in his career in Philadelphia hurt him.
Oh yeah.
And that lives on with him, and so you got to get past that, because he was an outstanding player. To me, he deserves to be discussed. And if he deserves to be discussed, let's get LaShawn McCoy in there too. But Ricky Waters is a guy that I'm not sure why we haven't paid attention to him, but we haven't.
That's exactly where I was going, Clark. As a matter of fact, I just saw it again. It's 25 years old now. I have a cap that says "For who, for what."
For who, for what?
It was so big that I've got a cap that's emblazoned on the cap that was sold here in Philadelphia. For who, for what? So yes, Ricky.
He was the perfect fit for the offense they had in San Francisco. And I said that to George Seifert. You don't have that guy coming out of the backfield can make all the catches. He could do it all. He was the Roger Craig of that team. And so they put in a guy named Derek LaVille afterwards. And he scored 10 touchdowns that year. And they thought, he did a good job replacing Ricky. Okay, yeah. But then it came to the playoff game when they played Green Bay in the 95 playoff games. What did Green Bay do? They rushed 3 guys, dropped everyone else into coverage, and said, "Okay, beat us with a run." And they couldn't. They couldn't beat him with Derek LaVille. You could beat him with Ricky Waters.
Clark, we appreciate when you educate us, when you educate our streamers. Thank you much for doing it. We'll give you the rest of the summer off, but we're definitely going to be getting you back on before the season gets underway. Thanks for coming on with us today.
Yeah, thanks for boiling my blood with history. I love that, guy. Thank you. I look forward to it. That was a pleasure. Thank you very much, guys.
If you enjoyed it, check out his I Test for Two podcast. Clark Judge of Talk of Fame here with us on Birds 365. Thanks, Clark.
Thank you.
John McMullen, Johnny McDonald, the Mac and Mac guys. You got a couple of old school guys here, joined by a third.
Boils, I got that boils my blood as well, Jody. All that stuff.
Got to take a little walk down memory lane. All right, we'll come back. You know what we got to do, put a bow on the show here on Birds 365.
Go for the pulls and the pools. Go for the oohs and the ahs. Go for the bubbles and the bubbly. Go for the story and the stories. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
On the field of life, First Trust Bank is there for you.
Champions on 3. 1, 2, 3.
Because Philadelphia dreams deserve a Philadelphia bank.
At Stateside Vodka, every new customer gets the world's best rocks glass, free.
You're telling me that bottle is cut in half?
You could say that.
At Action News, we cherish every moment, and it's our profound responsibility to bring you closer to your world. Never miss a moment. Trust the people at Action News.
All right, did you know I was the mommy slam dunk champion?
Really?
Yes, really, don't sound so surprised.
Let's see it.
Oh, you're ready. All right, here we go. Let's hear the crowd. So go to right, I go to left, fake a mom. Mama go up, mama!
She did it.
Again? You can't avoid gravity, but United Healthcare can help you avoid financial surprises by helping you compare costs and doctor quality ratings. United Healthcare.
Uh-huh.
Go for the midnight dares. Go for the game. Go for the hits. Go for the fans. Go for the win. Go to Ocean Casino Resort. Book your trip at theoceanac.com.
All right, John McMullen, Jody McDonald, last couple of minutes here on a Birds 365 episode. Johnny Mac thinking he may get an invite tonight before the day is gone to go down.
Yeah,
and get
it's already
some
tentative.
time.
It's already tentative, but I can't say when.
And oh, by the way, thank you very much, Eagles, for scheduling that for Friday. So it means we can't talk about it until Monday here on Birds 365.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. But I digress. I just want to wrap on this note today, John, because that has something to do with what we were just talking about with Clark Judge. That's former Eagles running back Ricky Waters and his infamous quote of "for who, for what." Prior to that, I have mixed emotions about Ricky Waters and his tenure as an Eagle and his Hall of Fame status and everything else because of something that happened prior to him ever becoming a Philadelphia Eagle. With my other Mac partner, Glenn Mac now, he and I were doing a show from King of Pizza, in the King of Prussia, Pizzeria Uno, which used to be right in front of the mall there. Great spot, good bar. And we did a show there once a week for like 3 years. So he and I are out there one week. It's after the NFL season, not shortly thereafter. And we get a note from our producer back at the studio. Ricky Waters' agent called. Ricky had become a free agent anytime with the 49ers, was free to talk to absolutely anybody. So Ricky Waters' agent calls the studio on the caller line and says, Ricky's in his car outside of Pizzeria Uno. He wants to know if Glenn and Jody want to talk to him. He would be willing to come in and join the show if they would have him on as a guest. So Ricky is booking himself as a guest on our show.
Well, he wanted some pizza, and he, why not hop on the show?
Exactly. And I was like, no. We book our guests. Guests don't book with us. And for a second there, I thought about just saying no. Then I said, oh, no, wait a minute. This kid's a really good bat. And the Eagles could be interested in him. He could sign with we could get the first interview with him before you have. Yeah, okay. Tell Ricky to come on inside and we'll bring him on. And he did. He joined us and walked into the joint. Sat right down. How you doing? Blah, blah, blah. Shot the breeze with him. Talked about his game and everything. Still put me off a little bit that he said, and I'm coming home. Harrisburg isn't quite Philadelphia. It's a little bit outside of Philadelphia. It's more home than San Francisco. I'll give you that. Yeah. But the fact that people there's the suburbs of Philadelphia, and then there's like not even counties outside of Philadelphia, which I thought Ricky was stretching it by calling as a former Harrisburg kid coming home to Philadelphia. And
well, Shady would say the same thing pretty much.
I'd say the same thing to Shady. That's not coming home.
Yeah.
A little bit
I get fired up same way as Clark with these discussions and players like that. And I always did it in basketball with Wilt Chamberlain because I hear it with so many guys. Well, if Wilt played now, he wouldn't be Wilt. And I'm like, why does the time machine work one way, Jody, with these people? You can put Wilt Chamberlain in this era, but you can't put Joel Embiid or whoever in Wilt's era where you didn't have the advantages of nutrition. In other words, what I'm trying to say is Wilt was born when he was born. He had those genetics to dominate the game like nobody ever has in the past, his era, or the future, by the way. Nobody's dominated the game like Wilt Chamberlain. He would, if he were born 30, 40 years later, he would have those same genetics that were better than everybody else's. So why does the time machine only work one way? Why can't you put all the modern players, like the receivers that put up all these numbers, Jody, and put them with Mel Blount and put them getting their you-know-what kicked at the line of scrimmage and held and beaten every single play? Why does the time machine only work one way?
As great as Joel Embiid is and will continue to be, The one thing they've never done for Joel Embiid is change the rules of the game.
Yeah,
Wilt was so dominant, they said, hold on, we got to make the lane wider, because if we don't, this is just ridiculous. No one can possibly stop that guy. None of these players in today's game have ever had the rules changed because they were too dominant the way that Wilt was. All right, great point. Partner, I say we do this again tomorrow, and you'll tell us if you did get that notification to get your butt down to the NovaCare complex so you can actually see the Eagles on the field.
Oh, I'm going. It's not official yet, but I'm going. It's just a matter of timing, Jody. Might even get a Jeff Kerr if we can. Might have to pop out a little early, but we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see how it shakes out.
We'll see how the timing works tomorrow. It's Jody McDonald for sure. John McMullen is a maybe. You have to be tuned in tomorrow to see in 2 and 2.
You've been listening to Birds 365, the destination for the passionate Eagles football fan who bleeds green. If it's Eagles football, we're talking about it. Debate inside the locker room and guests that are some of the greatest football minds from around the region. We hope you enjoyed the show. We know we had a blast. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll be back soon. But in the meantime, hook up with us on social media at JAKIB Sports. See you next time on Birds 365.